If you're a true crime fanatic like I am, you're going to want to listen to this. For Christmas, I got the serial killer coloring book, and it's going to go through the whole alphabet. Each letter represents a different serial killer. And I am going to be starting a series where we're going to go through each letter, color it, and we're going to talk about the crimes that they've committed and why they are in this book. If that does sound like something you're interested in, go ahead and like and follow me to watch the rest of the series. Welcome to part 1 of the Bloody Alphabet. Today we're starting with A, and this is Charles Albright, also known as the Eyeball Killer or the Dallas Ripper. His criminal career started early at age 13. He was known for going into petty theft and eventually going into aggravated assault, and this continued on to his older adult age. He did go to college, however, he was expelled due to him being found with stolen items. Therefore, he never graduated from college and always falsified his degrees. In 1981, he sexually molested his friend's 9-year-old daughter. He pled guilty and only received probation. It was said that Albright had an abnormal obsession with eyes, and you can see this with the 3 women he murdered. Mary Lou Pratt was his first victim in December of 1990. He shot her in the back of the head and carved her eyes out and took them with him. He did the same thing to 2 other women, Susan Peterson and Shirley Williams. He was caught by his hair fibers being at the last murder. He ended up being sentenced to life in prison. That's the story of Charles Albright. Like and follow for more of the Bloody. Welcome back to part 2 of the Bloody Alphabet. Today we are doing letter B and the infamous Ted Bundy. In the 1970s, Bundy began his spree of raping, torturing, and killing women in at least 7 states. The first time he was caught was in Utah in August of 1975. He was convicted of attempted kidnapping and sentenced to 15 years in prison. He was then moved to Colorado to face charges, but had escaped twice. The last time he escaped, they caught him less than a month later, and he had already killed 2 women and hurt 2 others in Florida, and then he kidnapped and murdered a 12-year-old girl. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to death for these killings. Bundy ended up admitting to killing 30 women between 1974 and 1978. However, many investigators believe it could have been many more. It is even said that Bundy was only 14 years old when he murdered Anne Marie Burr, who was 8. However, there is no evidence confirming this. He was executed in the electric chair in 1989. And that is the story of Ted Bundy. Welcome to part 3 of the Bloody Alphabet. We are working with letter C, and it is Andrei Chikatilo, aka the Butcher of Rostov or the Red Ripper. His first murder victim was Lena in 1978. He was seen with her shortly before she disappeared. However, his wife gave him an alibi. This led to an innocent man being executed for her murder. Andrei was a school teacher. He jumped from job to jobs due to claims of child abuse. He officially lost his job as a teacher. He began working at a factory where he had access to many young victims. He went on to murdering many more victims, where he would strangle, stab, and gag them. He would focus on runaways of both genders, and he would befriend them at train stations and bus stops. He would then lure them into the forest, where he would attack them and mutilate them with his knife. In many cases, he would eat their insides and remove their body parts. He was arrested multiple times but was released due to not having enough evidence. That was until November 20th of 1990. He was arrested and claimed to kill 56 victims. Only 53 were verified. He was then executed on February 14th, 1994. And that is the story of Andrei Chikatilo. Be sure to like and follow for more of the Bloody Alphabet. Welcome to part 4 of the Bloody Alphabet. Today we're working on letter D, and it is Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. Dahmer was a serial killer and sex offender. He murdered 17 males between the years 1978 and 1991. Growing up, he was very introverted and didn't have any hobbies. He turned to alcohol and began examining animal carcasses. He graduated from high school in 1978, and just 3 weeks later, he committed his first murder. The victim's name was Stephen Hicks. Dahmer later admitted to killing him because he didn't want him to leave his house. Dahmer dissolved, pulverized, and scattered his remains throughout his own backyard. 9 years would pass before he killed again. He would lure men from bars and then eventually drugged, raped, and strangled them. He would eventually begin carrying out very disturbing acts with their corpses. At times, he would even eat parts of them. On July 22nd, 1991, one of Dahmer's victims got away, and this is how he was caught. When he was arrested, the cops found many disturbing things in his apartment. He was sentenced to 15 life terms. In 1994, he was attacked by an inmate and died on his way to the hospital. And that is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. Welcome to part 5 of the Bloody Alphabet. Today is letter E, and it's Pablo Escobar. He was a Colombian criminal who was head of the Medellin cartel. He was the world's most powerful drug trafficker in 1980s and early 90s. His criminal career started in his early teens. He eventually became involved in drug smuggling. In the mid-1970s, he helped found the crime organization that later became as the Medellin cartel. In the mid-1980s, the Medellin cartel dominated the cocaine trade, with Escobar head of the organization. He was worth approximately $25 billion. He funded various projects to aid with the poor. This helped him win a seat in the Congress in 1980. 1982. However, he was also known to handle problems with bribes or bullets. His victims included government officials, policemen, and civilians. In 1989, they reportedly placed a bomb aboard an airplane in an attempt to kill an alleged informant. They ended up killing more than 100 people. He eventually surrendered to police and was able to build his own luxurious prison. However, the killings did not stop while he was there. He was supposed to be transferred to another prison, but during transfer he escaped. He was eventually found in 1992 and fatally shot. And soon after, the cartel collapsed. And that is the story of Pablo Escobar. Welcome to part 6 of the Bloody Alphabet. Today we are working with letter F, and it is Albert Fish, also known as the Gray Man or the Werewolf of Wisteria. He was an American sadomasochist serial killer and cannibal. He boasted that he had killed children in every state, however we are not sure if this is true or not. He had a rough childhood and his dad died when he was young, so he was put into an orphanage. He was soon introduced to practices such as drinking urine and coprophragia. From there, he ended up molesting young children, mainly boys under the age of 6. He eventually developed a morbid interest in castration. One of his more well-known cases is with 10-year-old Grace Budd. She willingly went with him to go to a party. He ended up taking her to an abandoned house where he killed her and cut her up. His intentions were to cook her and eat it. 7 years after Grace went missing, he sent a letter to Grace's family about everything he did to her. Soon after they got this letter, Fish had been caught. Although there was only 3 known victims, there was definitely a lot more possible victims out there. Fish was finally executed on January 16, 1936 in the electric chair. And that is the story of Albert Fish. This is part 7 of the Bloody Alphabet, and it is letter G with Ed Gein, also known as the Plainfield Ghoul. He was a murderer and body snatcher. He committed these crimes in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Gein was the younger of 2 boys from his mother and father. Growing up, he had an attachment to his mother, and this went throughout his adulthood. His mother taught him that all women were prostitutes and instruments of the devil. She would abuse the 2 boys, thinking they would become failures like their father. Ed's father died in 1940. Soon after, his brother died mysteriously while there was a fire on their farm. And then his mother died in 1945. He preserved the rooms that his mother would go to keep them untouched. He went on to murdering 2 women. He decapitated their body and put their heads in his house. He went on to dig up graves of women who looked like his mom. He also skinned their body and would make things. He would cover chairs and lamps with human skin. Shortly after his mother died, he decided he wanted a sex change. This is when he would make a woman suit out of female skin. He ended up going to trial. He was guilty of first-degree murder and spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. He ended up dying on July 26, 1984. You can find his full story on my YouTube. It's called Real Life Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that's the story of Ed Gein.